Welcome everyone to today's session on OpenSearch and why we would generally at Aiven recommend everyone to migrate from Elasticsearch to OpenSearch going forward. Maybe a couple of practicalities. We today have a questions and answers section. Feel free to post questions at any time on the presentation, and then we'll get back to those questions after the presentation today. But with that, I hope you find the presentation interesting. My name is Heikki Nousiainen. I'm CTO and co-founder of Aiven. And Aiven is a software as a service company started with a mission to bring the best open source data technologies in the hands of developers and really to accelerate the time it takes to get projects running in public cloud. I come from a developer background. I've been using a range of open source solutions in my projects for the past 20 years or so. My first introduction to open source probably with Linux in roughly 95. And ever since I've preferred open source for the reasons of business agility, being able to get started immediately with very little commitment to try out things and see if they work and whether there's sense in those projects. For the freedom to investigate if there are any issues and fix those issues whenever they arise. And sometimes just to extend or adjust existing functionality when needed. It was from this experience and this love for open source, as well as sometimes realizing that there's quite a lot of repetitive and laborious effort in setting up these open source data technologies into a state where they are ready for production use. Say, if we are talking about Postgres, then perhaps always ensuring that we have a backup strategy and backup processes working, or that we have that master replica set up in place so that we can trust that the services are up and running. So from this background, we found Aiven to really help developers to move quickly and getting to solve real business problems faster. With that quick intro, let's jump to today's topic. And I will start with what is OpenSearch, and then do a quick recap on what are the history of events that led to creation of OpenSearch. And then we look at some of the reasons why Aiven specifically is recommending everyone to switch to OpenSearch. OpenSearch is a fork, open source fork from Elasticsearch, specifically the 7.10.2 version, which is the last version that is available under open source Apache version 2.0 license. It was launched by Amazon Web Services, and it's a fairly recent process. So the first public release was as recently as in July this year. Intent of this project is to provide continuation and further development of the Elasticsearch technology, specifically under an open source license. And this is after Elastic, the company that is behind Elasticsearch technology, or has been behind Elasticsearch technology and commercializing that technology, decided to move away from the Apache version 2 license and decided to release upcoming releases and software under server-side public license. While the license is source available, it doesn't quite meet the definition of open source license as per the open source initiative's definition on open source. OpenSearch and Elasticsearch themselves, they are search and analytics suite, building on top of capabilities of underlying Apache Lucene, which we'll take a look into a bit what it is. But essentially, Elasticsearch and OpenSearch provide scalability and interfaces that make the technology easier to use and more usable, and also help to scale it to the requirements of today. An OpenSearch project, as mentioned, was founded by Amazon Web Services, but has been since joined by a number of organizations, including Aiven. If you look at a bit on what is Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch was created by Shay Bannon in 2010 with an aim to really provide a distributed search engine on top of Apache Lucene. So Apache Lucene itself is an indexing and search library started by Doug Cutting in '99. It's a pretty much a de facto core for search engines if you need search functionality in today's software. But it is also a library that is focused on managing indexing and performing search engines on a kind of local one index at a time, or as a library essentially. And Elasticsearch and OpenSearch in turn build on top of Lucene and implement functionality to break these indexes into multiple shards so that they can be distributed across a cluster of nodes. And Elasticsearch handles manages replication of this data for both scalability and also then fault tolerance, so that the cluster can lose nodes and we can still continue processing data despite that one. So it really makes this Lucene technology a service or product that can indeed scale and deal with the amounts of data and velocity of the data that is needed today. Elasticsearch is not the only solution in this space. There's a project called Apache Solr, which tackles quite a similar problem space and a challenge. It also uses Lucene underneath and implements similar distributed capability on top of the Lucene technology. And this Solr was donated to Apache Foundation by CNET Networks after kind of internal use in 2006 and continues to be active as of today. Main use cases for Elasticsearch and OpenSearch is perhaps log management, log collection, storage, analysis. For example, we at Aiven use Elasticsearch for collecting all system logs into a central location and enabling then our operators to be able to search and locate events across all of our infrastructure. As with the name, Elasticsearch or OpenSearch, application search is also an obvious use case. So if you used, for example, GitHub or GitLab and their search functionality to locate commits or issues or contents in those commits, all of that is powered by Elasticsearch underneath. Elasticsearch and OpenSearch, they have quite common use cases, and whenever you need to store documents or document objects and then perform queries and retrieval across those. So they might be customer orders or purchase receipts or inventory records, for example. And the technology really makes it easy to retrieve these by a very flexible query language that can help to build applications without needing to always figure completely beforehand on what are the necessary indexes or what are the necessary fields that we want to search the records with. And last but not least, information retrieval in general. Lucene and by extension Elasticsearch and OpenSearch, they provide a very rich query language that can deal with not only exact matches but fuzzy search terms or similarity matching, boosting various terms or that kind of or ranking results, and helping helping or thus helping in information retrieval area. So let's take a look what happened. So what is this OpenSearch, and what were the events leading to its formation? So Elasticsearch was originally indeed distributed under Apache version 2.0 license. It was usually distributed in a model so that the core Elasticsearch was open source, and then Elastic, the commercial entity behind the technology, was providing additional features and plugins and add-ons as a commercially licensed product. So open core, if you will. These additional plugins then included things that like machine learning or analytics based on that, but also something that perhaps could have been in the core itself, user authorization and authentication and access control in general. In 2021, in January, Elastic decided that they would stop doing Elasticsearch development under the open source license, but rather would continue development and do subsequent releases under this server-side public license. Other alternative is obviously then commercial Elastic license available as well, but neither of these licenses are recognized as open source licenses as per the definition of open source initiatives. Definition of open source, and this change that they made was reportedly made because of Elastic didn't feel that Amazon Web Services was perhaps, or let's say, rather than they wanted to prevent Amazon Web Services from offering a managed Elasticsearch service without some kind of a licensing agreement or revenue sharing agreement model with Elastic. But obviously, this changing from a license that is open source to something else, it's much more major. It impacts a wide wealth of companies, and also sometimes companies that have a strategic decisions to utilize open source technologies. And this license change then prompted Amazon Web Services to fork Elasticsearch. Fork it from the last version that was released under the Apache version 2.0 license, with additional cleanups, removing everything from the code base that wasn't then under that license. And with that announcement made earlier in the year, the first stable release came out in July this year. To make things even a little bit more complex, the fork obviously wasn't really well received by Elastic, the company. And Elastic made a move then to implement additional stricter version checks into the official client or SDK codes as well, which in turn led to AWS on forking those client libraries and SDK versions as well. From very early on, we at Aiven, we decided that we'd be supporting the fork that is under open source license. And I must add that, while we definitely regret Elastic's decision to do so, they are we fully appreciate that they have the rights as a copyright holder to do this for any reasons, for any business reasons they had to. We're not saying that whether it's right or wrong decision. We're more saying that this open source fork is necessary. At Aiven, as mentioned in the beginning, our mission is on very much focused on supporting open source data technologies. That's where our interest is, and we really believe that the open source technologies are the best choice over long term for business agility and for maintaining control over your own data, maintaining control over your process activities. But also, we believe that open source delivers the best and most innovative solutions over the longer term. Other members joining this project include Red Hat, SAP, Capital One, Logs.io, and many, many more. And these companies, they have similarly quoted they want to support specifically an open source licensed technology going forward. So why should you switch to OpenSearch? For us at Aiven, we're very strong on specifically choosing open source licensed technology because of the guarantees that it gives to you on your ability to access and process your own data. The definition on the open source initiative on open source licenses specifically insists that there are no limits on how you can utilize your data or how you can utilize the software that you're using. Gives you full freedom without any restrictions on the field, for example, where this can be utilized. And this is critical in a sense that to ensure that no one can revoke or limit your access at any point of time, be it present or be it in the future, to remove that business risk off the table. And similarly, we believe that open source is really key in moving forward with business without being dependent on any single vendor. So being able to really stay in control of your own data and your own processing. And of course, the other rights in open source include the right to inspect and modify software as you see fit, and also perhaps release those contributions for others to benefit as well. Second aspect of OpenSearch and why we definitely recommend is that it's the continuity promise. And well, again, I want to stress that Elastic was in full right in choosing the license they want to move forward. But still, I think it took quite a lot of users and people that rely on that technology by surprise. What was open source earlier, all of a sudden stopped to be so. So one of the key reasons to switch to open source is that you're guaranteed to stay under open source license. The project specifically decided to avoid contributor license agreements to claim grant or request grants from the contributors, either for the copyright assignment altogether or then rights to relicense the technology with a different license. So this kind of cements that the open source technology will remain available under a Hush 2.0 license now and into the future. Changing this would require either going to all contributors and requesting their approval on this, or then doing a significant cleanup on the code to remove anyone objecting this move. So this is a future proof, also ensuring that the fork will remain open source going into the future. Elasticsearch was with its such a strong commercial entity, Elastic, working with the technology and working in this open core model. It had a little bit of problems sometimes in this community in driving forward innovations that would compete with the commercial licensed items. So this sometimes delayed availability of functionality that the community would have wanted to have in the core Elasticsearch in moving forward, because it would compete with the commercial offering. And now with OpenSearch being a community-driven project, all of these decisions are now made by the community just for the benefit of the users and the community going forward. So that means that there's already plugins and add-ons for doing things like machine learning or anomaly detection, reporting capabilities, and especially important for us, for example, is to standardize on one set of authentication and access control framework so that it will work across all deployments of OpenSearch in the future. In this regard, we feel that this project is much healthier state from the perspective of community going forward, and we will expect that there's going to be rapid development and the introduction of new interesting additional functionality in the core of OpenSearch go forward. Just as an example, at Aiven, we implemented, because we needed to manage backups in object storage with the specific feature request on doing client-side encryption and compression. And this is a component that we wanted to open source. We would have wanted this to be part of the core Elasticsearch, but now we're really looking to upstream this into OpenSearch project for everyone's benefit and for the community's benefit. So anyone can utilize the same functionality as is used internally with Aiven. Similarly, we believe that now with the launch of OpenSearch, we see a community building around this project. So rather than being led by a single commercial entity on perhaps doing the decision and doing the prioritization, doing roadmaps, now we have a real true community that is working together for the benefits of the users and benefits of the project altogether. We believe that this community will be able to drive the product into better stability, scalability, resilience, and performance, both from being able to steer the direction more freely, but also then on the other hand, we have partners like Amazon Web Services with ample experience on how to run this software stack in scale, and then pushing those learnings into benefit of everyone going forward. To take, for example, the specific area security, it's now a much more clear community goal to make sure that the OpenSearch core has a standard way and common way of doing authentication and access control, instead of this being available only as a commercially licensed plugin on top of the core functionality. And last but not least, at Aiven, we generally always recommend open source first strategy to all users, all developers, all business. And that comes from the fact that we really believe that utilizing open source is the best long-term bet or long-term strategy, giving you the business agility to move fast without doing much of a upfront commitment and kind of little business risk in terms of if and when your project is successful and you need to scale up, kind of having a predictable cost and not being beholden by a single vendor or single solution. Similarly, it maintains that you can have that choice on utilizing managed services or running your own instances, or be it running in cloud or on-prem, and yet have the opportunity to really do this decision again and again if the business events so warrant. So open source really gives you that choice and that freedom. And similarly, then of course it gives you that control over your own data and your own processing activities, no matter what happens to a single vendor going forward, whether they are sold or or whatever happens, you're guaranteed to have that right to access your own data. And obviously, we believe strongly that open source as a movement, open source solutions tend to yield the best products and best solutions over the longer term. When everyone is pitching the improvements they specifically need, it leads to a greater solutions for the community as a whole. So how does one start to use open source? And in general, for the reasons and benefits stated just before, we recommend everyone to switch over to utilizing OpenSearch starting pretty much immediately. I'm really happy that I can also announce that Aiven for OpenSearch is now generally available. So if you're existing or new Aiven customer, you can get started with Aiven for OpenSearch, a managed version of OpenSearch on Aiven platform, which just a few clicks and get going in minutes. If you have existing Elasticsearch services, the migration path is fairly straightforward. Given the fork, the on-disk and backup data formats and all cluster internode protocols are 100% compatible. If you're Aiven customer and running Aiven for Elasticsearch services, we do support migration steps directly on the Aiven platform with just a few clicks. Generally, we would recommend, just to be on the safe side, 3-step approach. First, you can create Aiven for OpenSearch fork from an existing Elasticsearch services, so you can try things side by side, verify that everything works out. Our next step or recommended step would be to perform a fork of or create another Aiven for Elasticsearch service or copy out of an existing Elasticsearch service, performing the upgrade step there and verifying that everything works throughout the migration as expected and there's no impact on availability. And then finally, whenever you're feeling confident enough, the upgrade from Elasticsearch to OpenSearch as an Aiven service is just a matter of clicks in the Aiven console. I have here a few screenshots how it looks on Aiven console. This is a service view for those who are familiar with Aiven console. This is service view for an existing Elasticsearch service. So we're here showing just the options, either the perform a fork or do a migration, which means in place upgrade essentially. Forking is easy. Just here, service type here on the 4th row is you can select either OpenSearch or Elasticsearch, and we will create an identical copy of the data of your service, and then you can test the clients and connectivity with that service, make sure that everything checks out as expected. And finally, when you're confident enough that and want to do the switch over, we offer this easy few click migration option, in which we will do a roll forward upgrade. So this cluster will remain available and serving clients and queries at all times throughout the upgrade. And once finished, you are running OpenSearch altogether. If you're running self-hosted version of Elasticsearch, the upgrade are similarly straightforward. If you're running a cluster with multiple nodes, then getting OpenSearch into use is just a matter of introducing OpenSearch nodes into the cluster and replacing the original Elastic nodes. So as mentioned, all the internode protocols are fully compatible, so the cluster will gradually migrate to running OpenSearch. For single node deployments, single node instances, we generally recommend performing this upgrade via a snapshot and restore functionality. So taking a backup from Elasticsearch, stopping Elasticsearch, upgrading your software, and restoring from snapshot is our recommended way. It is possible to do in-place upgrade from Elasticsearch to OpenSearch utilizing the underlying data directories. So just by shutting down Elasticsearch, upgrading the OpenSearch, and pointing the OpenSearch to the data directory. We would still generally recommend going through the backup restore route, just in case something goes wrong. Then you have a rollback plan or rollback option available for that upgrade. And with that, my points are done, and we're gonna jump into question and answers next. Just wanna recommend that if you're interested in trying out OpenSearch, indeed register or log into Aiven platform and see the software in action yourself. For new customers, we have a specific sign-up code for today that grants you $500 for a 30-day trial on sign-up. So hopefully you are able to utilize that as well. And then let's see. Let's jump into Q&A. If there's anything I can still clarify or help from OpenSearch migration. All right, I'll take a first question here. Is Aiven contributing to the OpenSearch project? Yes, definitely. So we plan to. I mentioned this backup repository plugin that we've implemented for us. That's definitely something that we're looking to upstream shortly. We at Aiven we have also started open source program office, and we have actually full-time people that we want to contribute to the upstream open source projects to make sure that those open source projects remain healthy and viable. So we definitely want to contribute also to OpenSearch going forward. And there's next question on, do you think OpenSearch can keep up with Elasticsearch? Yes, definitely. I think there's a community need for OpenSearch version of the technology itself. There's a lot of companies that are either utilizing Elasticsearch or OpenSearch as of today, and it's crucial for them to have the open source alternative available. We are also seeing that a lot of companies and businesses are making strategic choice on open source technologies, that they do prefer open source technologies when doing software procurement altogether, just for the benefits and the freedoms that the open source licenses bring about. Yep. And the next question is about client support, and I suppose this is for mainly for Aiven services that are shifted from Elasticsearch to OpenSearch technology. In general, you most likely need to switch to OpenSearch clients as well. And this is due to the fact that the official Elastic release clients did bring about this explicit check that they only work with Elasticsearch or Elasticsearch services, and they check this just by versioning or version information from the service, not so much about the API compatibility. But as mentioned, the OpenSearch project did also fork the clients, and will definitely continue development of those clients as well. And there was a question with the what can I do with the credit code provided? So the credit code on the presentation is meant for if you register with that credit code, it will grant you $500 worth of credits, which means that mostly for evaluating OpenSearch, but every other Aiven services as well. And there's a question on do you think that the number of contributors will grow in the future? Definitely. For the same reasons, we believe that open source is definitely the longer term alternative going forward. Definitely, yes. And there's a question on what about Kibana then? Kibana similarly has been forked, and is carried under the name of OpenSearch dashboards, and we'll likely see continuation of development under that brand. And there's a question on end of life for Elasticsearch. I suppose this is in context of Aiven services. So we will be end of lifing up Aiven for Elasticsearch service in favor of Aiven for OpenSearch going forward. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact schedule available just here, but it will be posted definitely on Aiven's website and communicated to existing customers. The main reasons for this is that, as with all software, they need to be kept up to date. They need to be kept up to date with software patches and kind of up to date with security corrections whenever those have been found. And with the new license changes, Aiven is not unable to deploy changes coming from Elasticsearch upstream anymore. And a question on, do I have a roadmap on features that will be released on OpenSearch in the next quarters? To be honest, I don't have an exact latest view on that one. Not on OpenSearch community side or specific features and functionality of what will be in Aiven for OpenSearch, but definitely looking into what is interesting in the community. The combination of that, or at least my personal interest is on combining that access control in a form that is usable for all OpenSearch users going forward. I'm really keen on features and functionality that would allow to do searches in different storage tiers or snapshots of Elasticsearch to be able to again extend perhaps the scale of the services that we can run and operate. And could we expect more plugins to be available with introduction of OpenSearch? As original question says many of the extensions are in proprietary XPacks. I would say that there will be accelerated deployment of new features and functionality that will be as part of the core OpenSearch. And this is indeed because I think now the community direction is more clear. Previously, Elastic was kind of sitting on top of the Elasticsearch roadmap, and sometimes they had a conflicting interest in terms of deploying functionality that would then compete with the commercial add-ons. Now the community is in much more kind of clear and healthier state that they can really look for introduction of these features and functionality only based on what is the benefit of the community and what is the benefit of the end users themselves. And are all the machine learning functionality of Elasticsearch supported in OpenSearch and anomaly detection? A good question. They are not necessarily exactly the same plugins, but there is Amazon Web Services, for example, has some machine learning additions to Elastic, which are now obviously in OpenSearch. I wish I had, but perhaps we can post reference links. There's a good list from Amazon Web Services already or actually I think it is in OpenSearch FAQ on the list of plugins and modules that are now available in core OpenSearch itself. And how complex is migrate to Aiven software as a service from Elasticsearch on-prem? We have instructions on performing that upgrade. Or performing that migration. It's possible to do this indexing from remote functionality. And why did, there's a question on why did Capital One and other banks join OpenSearch project? And they are not restricted by the license as are, say, software as a service providers. And this goes back to, well, okay, they publicly stated, of course, it's the decisions is there, but they publicly have stated that they want to utilize open source specifically. So it's really a strategic choice for them to utilize open source technologies. There are some, especially big banks and financial institutions, they might have in the past been stuck with quite hefty licensing sums with a technology that they've not been able to change. And based on that history, quite a lot of the larger financial institutions are very strict on vendor independence and often have open source first strategies in place. All right. I think that was all the questions questions posted here. With that, I would like to thank everyone. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope we were able to motivate you to switch over to OpenSearch, or at least give OpenSearch a try, verify that it works equally well with all the clients and all the workloads. I'll stay here for a bit if there are any additional questions coming in, but with this one, thank you everyone for listening in.